Hi, Peter.
Hi, Shelly.
Hey, so glad to have you. So, for all of you who don't know, this is Peter, and he is currently living in South Africa, if you don't mind me sharing. And
That's
we're going
cool.
to be talking about favorite books, which I love. I love this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for letting me come on and talk. I thought I would share my favorite nonfiction book and my favorite fiction book that I've read recently. So for nonfiction, it is called Late Migrations, and the subtitle is A Natural History of Love and Loss. And it's by Margaret Renkel,
Okay.
who was a longtime columnist for the New York Times, and then she's also written this book, and it's autobiographical in the sense that she talks a lot about her own personal loss for parents, and but then also she brings in a lot about nature too, and it's that interplay between grief and beauty, and how that happens in the natural world, but it also happens in our own lives a lot. And so it's really interesting how she interweaves those strands throughout the essays. And there's, I mean, the essays are all super short, like maybe a page or
Oh,
2 pages. So
oh,
really, really interesting to, um, yeah, to read. And then it's probably the opposite of a page turner, I would say. I mean, just because it's like you just want to savor the words, and it'd be easy to read one a night or something. And yeah, so I mean, I read it at a time where it was pretty cathartic for me to go through. I had a sudden loss in my family, um, and it was really helpful. Like the second to last chapter in this book, she has the most profound definition of grief that I've
oh.
read. Like how um, yeah, just what grief does, and how we change to when we grieve, and what the whole process is like. Um, and
Um,
yeah, so I'd say it's a very healing book, but you don't have to be in a season of grief to appreciate it, just because her observations of the natural world and humanity are really profound. She's funny at times, and she's really she thinks back a couple generations past with her family and her mom when she was growing up, and so I'd say there's a focus on kind of the cyclical processes at work in the world that comes out
yeah.
too. Yeah. So
I have a
yeah,
question though. I have a question about
yeah.
it. So, do you think that the essays mirror her columnist work? Like do you think that they're supposed to be sort of meant to look like the columns or to mirror in some ways the columns that she wrote for the Times?
I don't think any of these
Like
were started in the
printed.
Times, or like she had a lot. Yeah, I think they're all unique to the book.
Okay.
But I do, because I did glance through a couple of her columns, and they all are kind of they're very thoughtful pieces.
Oh.
And so she's reflecting on things that she's noticed, and um so I think she probably drew inspiration from what she was doing in the Times, but these are separate.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, no, that's
yeah,
interesting, especially since they're so short. They're like
yeah,
bite-sized
yeah,
pieces. Yeah, and I love things that play with nature. Like when we relate our lives to nature, I feel like we can really it feels like you're even less alone because the things that we're experiencing in our lives is being echoed in larger
yeah,
places than ourselves.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did you find this
yeah.
book?
I think it was recommended in um like NPR has a
Oh,
thing at the end
nice.
of where they do like their columnists recommended books, and so I was combing through that and thought, oh, like grief and loss, like that. That sounds very familiar to what I'm going through, and so read it. And yeah, it really spoke to me. So
No.
yeah. Um, and then my favorite fiction book is called This Is Happiness, and it's by Niall Williams, an Irish author. And this book takes place in Ireland. And it's one of these like kind of coming of age stories
Oh yeah.
where the narrator is looking back on his life. And so he's looking back like 60 years to the 1950s in this small town, kind of backwoods Ireland. There's no electricity. And so part of it is they're putting in the electricity into town, and what that's going through, what changes are happening in the town because of that. Um, and he's living with his grandparents there, and they're yeah, it's really like it's one of those books where the setting feels like a
Mhm.
character too. Um, it's just very you feel like you get where it's set. It's not an exciting book. Like I'm realizing like I'm such like plot doesn't really like it's not the first thing I'm looking for in a book, but
Me either.
it is beautiful. Like every page there's like things that I was highlighting and like just it's it's funny. It's uh
Huh.
it's beautiful. I thought like I could read an
Yeah, I've
excerpt. Let
never even
me
heard of this book. I've never even
okay.
heard of
I
it. So I'm
recommend
just
it.
like, what is this? I feel like I'm
Yeah.
really missing out.
Oh man. Uh yeah, so I'll just read this and it kind of gives a idea of what kind of how his descriptions are. So he says, once he got going, my grandfather's way of telling a story was to go pell-mell, throwing Aristotle's unity of action, place, and time into the air, and in a tumult, let the details tumble down the stairs of his brain and out of his mouth. He had grown up in an age when storytelling was founded on the forthright principles of passing the time and dissolving the hours of dark. To conquer both time and reality, then, one of the unwritten tenets of the local poetics was that a story must never arrive at the point or risk conclusion. And because in Faha, like in all country places, time was the only thing people could afford, all stories were long, all storytellers took their and your and anyone else's time, and all gave it up willingly, understanding that tales of anything as aberrant and contrary as human beings had to be long, not to say convoluted, had to be so long that they wouldn't, and in fact couldn't, be finished this side of the grave, and only for the fire gone out and the birds of dawn singing might be continuing still. And
That's
honestly,
great.
every page is like that.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
beautiful.
Don't even
And
like that's I'm like, okay, I know what I want to buy next.
yeah, it is awesome. But I will say, I listen to quite a few audiobooks too. And
Yeah.
this on audio is amazing because the narrator is like an old Irish man. Like he has the accent and he um yeah, it's just like listening
Yeah.
to if your grandpa was Irish, it'd be like listening to him tell the story.
I'm just gonna
Um
pretend like my grandpa was Irish and just be like,
yeah,
oh yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. And so it's not I mean it's not the most exciting book to describe to someone because it's not super plot heavy. It's not that's not the driving. I mean there's a plot. There's a
Of
lot that
course.
happens, but it's a lot more like interested in who are these characters, what's going on with them, and how did this elderly man become the way that he is because of how he um, grew up in this place and what stamped it out on his life.
That's
So
awesome. Especially since like I'm really intrigued at your description of like they're putting in electricity in the town. So it's like at this really interesting turn in like technology
Yeah.
for the townspeople, and like how we all take that kind of change. Hmm, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, there's even like a section where it talks about how they went and picked out the poles um for the electrical poles, and they'd send a guy to Norway, I think, to
That's
pick
so
out the poles,
cool.
and just like yeah, and so there, I mean, it's historical. I'm learning how like they actually did it, and but yeah, I feel like after reading that book, you do have a bigger appreciation for the way that we live, the things that we take for granted, and um yeah, a lot of it made me want to have like a slower pace of life too, because that um yeah, just the way that he describes like life in that community um is pretty appealing too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's I'm really interested now. I'm like, you really sold me on wanting,
Well,
well,
I hope you read it. Yeah.
both these books, because I'm like, they sound really good.
Oh man.
You know,
Yeah.
like I could definitely fit in an essay a night, about
Yeah.
grief and growing from grief. I'm like, I could
Yeah.
do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
That's
man.
awesome. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
Thanks for letting me gush
Yes,
and talk
that is like,
talk about it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
one of those people in my real life where I'm like, so do you read? Like, so to
Yeah.
somebody, I'm
You're
like, do
right.
you read? And then
Yeah.
I was talking to someone the other day, and he was like, yeah, I read. And I'm like, oh, what do you read? And he was like, I don't know, whatever's on sale on the Kindle. And I was like, oh. He's like, I'm just not very picky. And I'm just like, uh-huh, yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm like, no,
Um,
no, like, why would you do that to yourself?
I
But
know. I know. I always think like, how many more books do I have in me if I read, so many a year, and then
oh, do
I'll have so many
you?
more. Or I just think I'm a big like, I will DNF a book if it's not doing it for me, because I feel like there's a lot of books out there. I
Yeah.
want to make sure that
Yeah.
I'm picking good ones, and these are
For
good
me,
ones.
those are
Yeah.
good ones. Yeah, I'm kind of I need to DNF more probably, because I will struggle through something just to I mean, often it's okay, I'll struggle through a classic and I will like
Yeah.
really try and see what everyone else sees in it. So hard sometimes.
No.
And I need to like move on. But sometimes it's worked out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
classics are harder because you feel like there's more pressure. Like, they're classics for a reason. Everybody else must like them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I'm like, oh man, I just want, but then sometimes, especially, well, like if we're on the vein of classics, if I do read it and I finish it, then I feel like it is important to articulate why I didn't like it. I think that is really valuable as
Mm.
well. And then what's funny is that if I end up talking about it on my channel, then in the comments, there'll be like 15 people like, I didn't like it either.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like it either. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I wasn't alone in my feelings, which is always kind of neat as well.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Well,
Well, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so
yeah,
much
thank
again for
you.
having me.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop our recording, but I just want to say
Okay.
thanks again for coming on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah, and sharing. And I'm excited. I'm really excited about those
Okay.
books
Yeah,
now.
I do hope you read them. Yeah.
Yeah.